You know, when you do these live streams, you're supposed to look at the lens of the camera, but invariably you look at the monitor instead. And so I notice a lot of us do that. And I notice George Webb does it an awful lot. He's talking to the monitor and not to the camera, and I'm guilty of the same thing. So I apologize. Welcome everyone. Yes, I'm doing another one of these to kind of follow up on some things I've said both on YouTube and on X today. Uh, if any of you follow me on X, and you should, I think, because you don't need to belong to X. You can access it by going to x.com and then put in at Royston Potter. And my X account will come up, and you can see basically what I'm addressing. You won't get the full impact of it because I guess you can't access all of the additional posts and things like that that come along with it. But at least you'll get an idea. But it's on X that I do a lot of my work during the day because I'm able to gather information from there from all sorts of sources, and I can also give information to people that I consider to be important. So if you can follow me on X, I know a lot of you don't like X, I understand, and there are all kinds of problems with all these different social platforms, but again, you'll see the activities that I'm engaged in if you're at all interested, okay? So I just mentioned that up front. Uh, we talked the other day about the responsibility of the intelligence communities allowing this horrible situation to occur. There are all kinds of arguments now, as I knew there would be amongst the intelligence people. You got Scott Ritter kind of in between people like Ray McGovern and Larry Johnson, who are saying that yes, it was just an intelligence screw up, to other people like the Egyptians that are saying, no, we gave them the warning and they ignored us. So you've got those two, and then Scott Ritter's kind of in between. He's kind of saying, yeah, it's kind of a number of things. The big problem was that Israel went to total reliance on AI and gave up on some of their other things, some of their other intelligence gathering procedures because they were trusting AI so much. Well, one of the things I've just got to say, and I'm not finding fault with any of these people because they're all giving it pretty much from their point of view, from their experience, and most of them have a great deal more experience than I do in the field. But I also understand that there are sacred cows that even after you leave the CIA or a concomitant type of organization, you really don't come down on them too hard. One of the arguments was today that I heard from Larry Johnson is that, well, if this was actually a big cover up, somebody would have spilled the beans. Hey, there was a big cover up in 9/11, right? And who spilled the beans so far? But people like us that have investigated it. We're not considered experts, but we're not dumb either. We're not stupid, right? So uh, they have these people, they have these loyalties, even though they don't want to admit it. And I look at it that way. I don't necessarily find fault with it. But if they're ex CIA, I don't care who they are, a warning flag goes up. I think it's enough to say that those of us who understand the tactical aspect of intelligence understand that these things would have been found, as I said the other day, with or without the cyber assistance. Because again, there are all these satellites. Somebody said, well, they don't do things. Hamas doesn't do things on online because they can be found out. So everything's by word of mouth. Well, okay, fine. You don't have any human. You think the human was avoided by, or I'm sorry, electronic surveillance was of that type was avoided because of the person-to-person contact. Did Israel totally drop their human sources? I doubt it. And more than that, they say that because of that, there wouldn't be any trace of anything as far as monetary reimbursements and things like that. Well, I'm not so sure about that either. But one thing's for sure: with the amount of whether they were trucks, because we saw those, of course, in Afghanistan. You know, those little pickup trucks and things like that. You'd have the weapons shipments, you'd have the vehicle shipments, you'd have all those other things I talked about that would definitely be anomalies. And then one of the commentators, I won't say who, said, well, nobody's going to find 12 hang gliders coming over the border. There were only 12. No, there were a lot more than that. And then I had that former IDF soldier where she was explaining that she worked on the border and that nothing came across there that they didn't know about. And she would even get called about a bird that went by. So the intelligence community, even the old timers that are out and doing these comments, they still have their buddies to kind of soften the blow too. So I'm going to be hard on everybody because I think that's the better way to go. Because at this point, we can't trust anything that anybody in any official capacity says, number one. Number two, these people that are doing the commentaries, like me, they've been out of the program for quite a while. They have contacts, of course. But again, the types of contacts they have, which I don't have to worry about, the types of contacts they have, they don't want to cause a loss of that contact. So they're not going to go too far. Okay? They're not going to go too far. So anyway, that's kind of the intro of what we're doing here. I've entitled this Nakba and the 1953 overthrow of Mosaddegh, who was the president of Iran. You'll say, well, why are you going to talk about these things? What the heck is a Nakba? I've got to watch my power again on my phone tonight. I've got the plug close, so I'll go for a little while, but they'll have to then pause and put that in to make sure that we can continue going. Are we 5x5, everybody? Does everything look okay? The the sound, the video, everything look okay? I appreciate it if you'd let me know. I think everything's all right. I don't have my other computer hooked up or my other phone. I just didn't want to, I guess I'm getting lazy. Your contact means nothing. What does that say? Your contacts mean nothing. Islam is the problem. Well, that's a narrow, myopic point of view. I've publicly stated on my own that I have no interest in Islam. They teach some terrible things, and I'm not going to get into the religion. I've studied it. I spent a lot of time in all those Middle Eastern religions, Abrahamic religions, many years ago. As most of you know, that's how I wrote my book, The Crimson Thread. And I have the credentials to go along with all that. All I will say is that there are dangerous people in every religious organization. You want to talk about the Inquisition? I hear all these people saying, well, the Christians never did this kind of stuff. Really? You don't know about the Spanish Inquisition? Just as an example. And there are things very similar to that. The Salem witch trials. Get into that. Supposed Christians doing those things. The murder by Christians of the Alexandrian scientist and librarian over the Alexandria Library, Hypatia, who was killed and then dismembered. Her body, they used shells to I'm being pretty graphic here. Maybe I shouldn't do this, but they used these, after they killed her, they used these shells to skin her and then did horrible things. Oh, but the Christians never did anything like that. We never did anything like that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you have. Catholics, like I said, the Spanish Inquisition, all sorts of things. I'm not going to waste a lot of time on it. It's a fact. There are good things in Islam, and there are bad things. There are good things in Judaism, and there are bad things. One of which is there are good things and bad things in the Talmud. Very bad things in the Talmud. And I might hasten to add, all you who want to find fault with Islam, that Islam came about in about the 6th century AD. And it was based on, people say, oh, well, the Muslims, the Islamic people would say, well, Muhammad was a prophet and he got this from God. Okay, well, I'm not going to argue that. But there's some problems, which I won't go into all the details, but I will say this. The Quran and the Islamic philosophy in general was an aggregate combination of Messianic Christianity, their tenets of, especially of throwing off foreign rule, that kind of thing, and some other things, which I won't get into here right now, and Talmudic Judaism. So some of the nasty stuff that's in the Quran and in the Haggadah, I think is the name of it, those things are from Talmudic Judaism, the bad side, okay? The killing of Jews, the killing of Christians, and I'm not going to get into all the really nasty stuff. You can look it up online. Just be aware that you need to make sure that you're vetting the source. But the Talmud calls for some really bad stuff, especially with older men and supposed priests and very, very, very young children. Okay, just as an example. Well, the Quran does the same thing, and the commentaries on that. So you've got to be very careful with these things. And that's why I say so often that you have to understand so much more than just what's on the written page of these documents. You have to understand the history, the culture, and the basics of the language, which is where we're going to go today, as I promised the other day. All right, so I got very disturbed, as you know. This has been a horrible thing. I will never, ever justify the killing of people minding their own business. Not any danger to you, immediate danger, even long-term danger, depending upon what the situation is, and certainly not when they're basically innocent and have no part in what's happened. And like these kids that were out there in the Negev desert at this rave, that was just plain simple terrorism and murder. Okay, I'm not excusing Hamas for that, and I'm not excusing them for shooting those old people by the bus stop or by going through the towns and killing whole families. Now, am I sure all this has happened? Reasonably sure. Yeah, there are some things I question. I think this most recent report that Hamas was beheading babies is BS. I think that goes back to the situation with, if you remember, during the beginning of the Iraq War, not the Iraq War, Desert Storm back in '91. There was a lady who claimed to be a nurse. She was actually the daughter of a diplomat. Went into Congress and testified that she witnessed Iraqi soldiers taking babies out of incubators and throwing them on the floor to die. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can stop this here. Yeah, we got it. We got it stopped. Okay, sorry about that. And it was a lie. Well, I would be very cautious about believing everything. See, they'll say, well, we can't show you these gruesome pictures because it's just too bad. We just can't put them out. Well, that's their excuse for not proving. Remember I said, if you can't cross-examine these people that tell you this stuff, then don't trust it. Right? Okay. So that's where we are on that. I am very upset that, and I will stick by what I said the other night, that the information was available and well known by Israeli and possibly U.S. intelligence and probably U.K. intelligence. It was certainly known by Egypt, who made the warning, and I told you about that last night and gave you the link, right? So these people stating that no, the government wouldn't do that. Oh yeah, haven't they done it throughout our history? Haven't they done it? This wasn't exactly in the neighborhood of a false flag, but it was certainly set up very similar to Operation Northwoods. Operation Northwoods, of course, was when the DoD, the Pentagon, wanted to kill Americans and down planes and then blame it on Cuba so they could invade Cuba back during the Kennedy presidency, and Kennedy said, no way, okay? You don't think there are people in there that do that now? That aren't willing to kill their own people? And I could get it, so that they can get some advantage? Come on, you got to grow up if you don't think that's the case. And I see that all over Twitter. And the type of people that are saying that Twitter, X, the type of people that are saying this, they're otherwise intelligent people, but they have biases and prejudices, pro and con. Some are very much Jewish oriented and want to support the Jews, the state of Israel, no matter what. Others hate Jews in Israel and want to be against them no matter what. Well, I'm not in either of those categories. I've studied Judaism, as most of you know, all right, Hebrew. I've studied the history. I know all these different innuendos and nuances and all that. So I don't set in concrete that one side, take one side or the other. As I said the other day, and I think I proved it, I called out Hamas for their butchering of the people, their terrorism and murder that they committed. Sorry, I don't need to laugh. I got to get my words straight here. And that's what it was. Attacking military posts. That's legitimate. Unfortunately, in war, I don't like it, but that's legitimate. But shooting innocent, unarmed, minding their own business civilians, especially women and children. Sorry, Hamas. I'm sorry, but I ain't giving you a pass on that. And there was a person, a guy who claimed to be a Hamas soldier, I guess, that came up and he put a post up on X. I think it was actually on TikTok and it made it onto X, where he's saying, we don't kill women and children. See here, we don't do that. Anybody tells you we do that, they're lying. We don't kill women and children. Well, I'll say to him what I said to Israel, okay? You're spouting BS. Of course you do. And you've done it for a long time. And just because Israel has killed some of your women and children in their bombing runs, and I mean, they've actually shot people just for coming too close to a fence. I know that, okay? I understand that. But just because that happened doesn't make it right. Although in your culture, I know you say an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Well, I reject that. You'll say, well, that's weakness, well, whatever. I'm not going to shoot an unarmed woman. I'm not going to do it. Or a child for that matter. And anybody who does is a coward and a murderer. I think I've set myself straight with everybody on that, have I not? Thanks for letting me know on 5x5. Okay. So then I got a little concerned about what I'm hearing from these Jewish rabbis. Again, I'm very familiar with the rabbinic points of view, and the different types of Judaism. I'm very familiar with all of that. And I think a lot of things that they talk about are good counsel. But almost always, even though they'll say Torah, they might quote a passage from Torah, but then they'll use Talmudic passages to expand on it and explain it. I explained to you the other day that there are two types of Talmuds, the Babylonian and the Jerusalem, and they're a few years apart and slightly different in their contexts. But basically they would be known as the oral law, the Mishnah and the Gemara, those two things. Prior to Jesus' time, they were basically the oral law. They would be known as the oral law, which Jesus rejected, by the way. And he told the elders that they needed to get back to the letter of the Torah. Well, we're going to talk about the letter of the Torah today. See, I'm not going to expand outside of the language itself, but even the Jewish rabbis would do that to make their point. And they're doing it today. And that's why I got upset the other day with that one rabbi saying that it's okay to kill civilians because we've got to save our soldiers. Rabbi, you're wrong. And I'm going to show you that. And why you don't know this, I don't know. You're a Kabbalistic rabbi. I think you watch me and you should know this, and you should not be holding back just because you want to support Israel. As a matter of fact, as I sent out today on X, I sent it to Torah Jews, at Torah Jews. I find them to be very, very well versed. I have no idea who they are, but I watch their posts. And I asked them to send some of my posts to as many rabbis, both in Israel and in the diaspora, as they could. And basically my post said, this is the basic idea, rabbis, you're not doing your job as spiritual leaders if all you do is praise Israel and say that it's God's chosen people and that they have a right to do what they need to do to survive, those kinds of things. That's fine and dandy, but that's not how God operates. And if you read the Torah or any other real scripture, you're going to see where God chastises his people for disobedience and for their wrongdoing. So rabbis, you better get off your butts, get off of your praises and your sanctimonious piousness, and start calling the leaders of Israel and even the people there. Do you know how immoral the state of Israel is? It's not Torah based at all. It's wicked, it's evil, the things they do, to others, but even inside the country, what they do. And I'm not going to go through that here, but there are a lot of things. And if you rabbis aren't going to call those leaders out, which is, and the prophets of old, what did they do? They went up and they told the leaders of the, whichever, in Jerusalem or, up in the northern kingdom, wherever they were, they called the leaders out. They said, hey, you're out of line. You better stop doing this. Where are you, rabbis? Where are you leading your people to tell them that they're being wicked by the things that they're allowing, while they punish those who practice certain aspects of Torah that shouldn't be illegal in the state of Israel if it's a Torah obeying country? Well, what they do is they go back again to these Talmudic or medieval Kabbalistic rabbis who find fault with certain things that the early patriarchs did. Some of you will know what I'm talking about. I don't want to get into that detail tonight, but it's not just the marriage relationship. There's some other things as well. Okay, so they're not following Torah. Oh, they might have the holidays, Yom Kippur, Hanukkah, which isn't a real holiday actually, but Passover, et cetera, Sukkot, all these different Rosh Hashanah, et cetera, which is fine. But those are holidays. Just because you do the outward ordinances doesn't mean you've had a change in heart, and it still means that even when you do that, and this was the problem in the Old Testament, in Isaiah and in other places, God says, I'm tired of your sacrifices and your celebrations and your holidays. I want you to have a change of heart and mind. But they think that if they do those things, they get forgiveness of their sins, and that's it. So they can do anything, especially to Gentiles, Goyim. They can do anything to them, according to the Talmud, and it's okay. What did I say about you being the ground? Right? And that your spirit is from God, and it inhabits this ground. So the old idea of God, of their gods being attached to the ground, in reality, you are the ground, and God is attached to you. So they shouldn't be treating these other people. And in the old days, as I've explained, the high priest would go into the Holy of Holies, and they would pray for all of the nations of the earth, the 70 nations. They wouldn't condemn them. They would pray for them, that they would be prosperous and do well and accept the truth. Today, who's doing that? So, rabbis, you better get on your job. You don't have a prophet today, or no one you'd want to, the Lubavitchers would say that Rabbi Schneerson was the Messiah. Obviously not, and would say that he was a prophet. And I'm not saying everything he said was bad, but if you're not calling out the leaders of the nations, you're not doing your job, and especially of your chosen land, your promised land, God's gift to you, according to your theology, this land of Israel, which is not even made for the Jewish people. It was made by the Balfour Declaration, the British Commonwealth, the British Crown, the Rothschilds, and basically the UN. Oh, well, God works that way. That's how he works. Okay, well, that might be, but if he's going to use the types of people to establish his holy land like the Rothschilds, count me out. Okay. So all of those Jewish people, or Messianic Jews, or all these people that want to hold up Israel as the holy place, the God's place on earth and God's holy people, they're not doing very well over there to prove that they're God's holy people. And I made a point today that, as I've talked about Russia being like Assyria to punish the Western democracies that have fallen away and done all these horrible, immoral things. And I likened it to Assyria, where God used Assyria, a godless people really, to destroy Israel and carry it away into captivity. Well, maybe the Arab nations are going to do that to you, because you say that you're God's people, but you don't act like it. If you're going to take God's name on you, you're supposed to be a representative of that name. Not just in name only, but in what you do. And you fall far short. Mene, mene, tekel upharsin. That's you, Israel. Now, rabbis, get on the stick here and do your job. So, as you know, one of the rabbis said something that got me quite upset, and it was, looks like I'm going to lose power. What do you know, that fast? Wow, that's incredible. Sorry about that. I knew it was coming up. He said it's okay to kill innocent civilians to protect your own soldiers. Where'd you get that, Rabbi? Where'd you get that? Talmud? There are places in the Torah where it says kill utterly everything. It does. But those are very specific circumstances which I'm not going to get into here because you've got a problem, Rabbi. And it's right in this word right here. I talked about it to my audience, my followers here, several months ago. It goes along with kind of, as I said the other night, the word for image in Genesis 1, zelem. It has that zadeh in there, that zadeh, that thing about righteousness, piousness, righteousness, a righteous man. On his knees. There it is right there. The knees bent, the arms raised up in prayer. That's what that is. Do you realize that? Here he is, kneeling down before God with his hands raised up to God. That's why a lot of people pray with their hands up. It comes from that. Did you know that? Rabbis, you should know that. Why is it that you can talk, rabbis, about the Talmud and how it comments on the Torah, and you never get into this to help people to understand how to actually interpret the scripture? Because it's knowledge, and knowledge is power, and you don't want to share that, right? Sorry about all this noise. I don't know who's sending me all that. I should have turned the notifications off, but so let's look at this word. Exodus 20:13. That's the commandment that says, "Thou shalt not kill." It's okay to kill civilians to protect your own citizens. Thou shalt not kill. What is somebody who's not armed and being a threat to you, an immediate threat to you? Who is that? It's an innocent person. What are women considered to be innocent? I mean, yeah, if they pick up a gun and try to shoot you, that's a little different. All right? Children. Is carpet bombing a place to protect your troops okay with God? Because you're doing it to save your own people? What do the scriptures say about not plundering others for your own welfare? You forget about that, Rabbi? See, anything that you do, anything that happens in this little country over here, that's okay. That's okay because they're God's chosen people. Well, God's chosen people don't act like this. So I'm going to take you back to when I gave this lesson here last summer, I think it was. Exodus 20:13, thou shalt not kill. What is the word for kill that's used there? And it's not used very often throughout the Torah or the Old Testament. In addition to that, it's kind of separate. It's like used in only two places. It's the Hebrew word in Strong's, and you can look this up if you have Strong's, 7523. And this is it here. It's Resh, Zadeh, and Chet. And the way you pronounce it is Ratzak. Ratzak. Really different. So what does it tell you when it says, when God said lo here, this is lo, that means do not, okay? Or no, lo, no, do not. And that's how it's stated there in Exodus 20:13. Lo, ratzak. Do not kill. Kill what? You can't kill an animal to eat it. You can't kill in self-defense. The word means something more. It means murder of innocence. It means the killing of innocence. And it's right in the word. Resh, Zadeh, Hate. The hate is the key to this word. It means stop. It means barrier. Do not pass. The Zadeh, I've already explained, means righteous person, righteousness, righteous man, righteous woman, innocent child. The Resh means consciousness, the front of the brain, as opposed to Kuf, which is the back, the area where you and I explained this in a video some time ago, the area of the brain where you have your survival instincts and things like that. You want to eat, you want to, all that kind of stuff. But this area is the conscious area where you think, where you reason, where you logic, where you develop, where you advance. So what does this mean? Lo Ratzak, it means do not stop, hate the righteous man from what? Attaining greater consciousness, greater thought, greater understanding. And if you end him or her or the child from being able to do this, it says you've committed murder. So justifying killing people and carpet bombing to protect your own troops, you violated this commandment. Unless God specifically tells you, as he did in Joshua's time and some others, according to your writings, and I contest some of this. I'm not going to do all that here. But he says, destroy everything that's there because it's so wicked. The children can't even grow up in a good environment because it's so wicked. So just wipe it clean. Has God told you that, rabbis? Has God told that to Netanyahu? Has God told that? Is he even speaking to anybody in Israel? I had a friend once who said, everyone wants to talk to God. The question is, who does God want to talk to? Well, apparently it's nobody in Israel. Everything that the rabbis talk about, they are using the Talmud to interpret the Torah. They won't go here like I'm telling you to do, and I've been talking about for several years now in these classes. It's not of any private interpretation, not even the Talmud. Jesus rejected the oral law and always said, it is written. And he called the other bit, he said, those are doctrines of the commandments of men. That's what the Talmud is. That's what oral. There's nothing wrong with having a discussion and trying to understand things. But they're not giving you the basics here to help you understand. We're responsible when an innocent person is killed by our actions. In the old days, both for actual murders, or if you accidentally kill somebody, let's say you're out in the field and you've got your oxen out there and you're plowing and you accidentally run over somebody and kill them, guess what? You just killed an innocent person. Da-da! You're liable for it. So what did they have? Does anybody know what they had, what God allowed to be set up in those days according to the Torah, according to the Israelite writings themselves? What did God say that they could set up to keep people who make this type of mistake from being killed and have this murder revenged upon them? Does anybody know? Can anybody tell me what it is? I'll just tell you, okay, because I don't want to waste a lot of your time. They were cities of refuge. And there were specific ones throughout the land. So if you're out there on your land and you run over some innocent person and kill them with your oxen, the family of that person has a right to take vengeance upon you, stone you to death, whatever. That's their choice. And if you really want to get away from that, the only way that you could was you'd have to go live in a city of refuge. That's how serious it was. So, Rabbi, you're wrong. You're absolutely 100% wrong. And anybody that tells a soldier that if he kills these civilians and they're just collateral damage. He's not responsible for that. I think all these soldiers that have been involved now, I'm not going to try to judge them, but I'm going to say they're not free and clear, and they're going to find that out. So, Rabbi, you got to back off. How does the IDF handle this thing with Hamas? Like they have always been able to do. You hunt down the individual Hamas fighters. That's not something you can't do, IDF and Mossad and CIA for that matter. And if you had done what you were supposed to do in this last situation, you would have been able to set up, basically, you would have been able to set up traps for these Hamas fighters coming in and kill them before they ever got, or take them captive, before they ever had a chance to do anything. You could have shot the hang gliders, the ultralights, out of the sky. And there weren't just a few of them, Larry Johnson. I don't know where you got that. There were a lot of them. So there we are. Now you should understand what thou shalt not kill means. You kill an innocent person, you're going to pay a big price. There's no forgiveness for that. Do you understand that? Going to the city of refuge just gives you a little time to try to straighten your affairs out. But you'll have to pay the price for that murder. I'm not saying I know what that is. That's up to what happens when you get on the other side, or even here. It could happen here. And what's happening to Israel today, in my opinion, is because they've been evil and wicked. Look what Netanyahu did to his people. And if you think, well, yeah, he did it, not the people. Well, in olden times, the story of David, he numbered Israel, which was forbidden for him to do. And he did it anyway. And a plague came in and started killing people. David realized he had that wasn't their responsibility, right? But they were suffering from it. So he had to repent of it, go to God and say, I'm sorry, and then the plague was stopped. Same thing for Netanyahu and the Mossad and the IDF and the Knesset, for that matter, all of you people. Rabbis, you got to call them to repentance. At least that. And I could sit here and enumerate a lot of the things that are happening in the United States are happening in Israel as far as some of this debauchery. And I'm not going to get into it because it'll take this down. But you know what I'm talking about. Okay. So I said here, is Hamas Assyria in the current context? Probably. And maybe, before long, Hezbollah. Am I looking forward to this? Do I want it? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you've got to repent and do the right things, Israel. Stop claiming to be these chosen people that can do anything they want anywhere contrary to the law, the Torah. You can't abide by the Talmud and say that you can do these things because some sage in the Middle Ages said you could. Israel, I said, is wicked, immoral, pretentiously pious. I've got some specifics here I'm not going to repeat. I don't know if you can see that word there. I hope not. They use deceit and trig. They steal. They want to rule the world. Netanyahu said that, the cyber thing. I talked about it the other night. Cyber is the real power. Netanyahu is corrupt, which is another reason why some of this may have happened. Because he's trying to divert attention from some of his corruption. Not to mention the fact that they want to start World War III, whatever. Same thing with Biden. Biden, he doesn't want people talking about his corruption, so he's doing all this other stuff to divert people's attention, right? All right. So again here, Rabbi, call Israel to repentance, all right? It's wrong to only praise and talk about how God has blessed these people with their being able to go to the land of their origin. Well, who said that? They did. They said that God told them that that's their land. And that it's that way in perpetuity? Well, I don't read it that way, but they like to claim that. Their own Tanakh says that God took them out of the land and spread them across the earth. There were some apocalyptic, even messianic things that talked about returning to the land. But I'm going to submit to you what I said before. You are the land. The Spirit of God is to dwell in you. And the Christians put it another way. You are the tabernacle. This is the tabernacle of your spirit, the spirit that God gave you. Well, I think that's exactly the case. Like I said the other night, I'm talking like a Christian, but there's some facts to that. Even if you have the red heifer, which you say you have now, you have several of them, I guess, without blemish. You're waiting until they're 3 years old to see if they blemished or not, rabbis. And if they don't blemish, okay, you've got something that you can, burn and then use the ashes for the ritual of touching a dead body, right? Which is what's necessary before you can do certain ordinances in the temple, if and when it's ever brought back, right? I think you have a makeshift tabernacle already, but we won't talk about that. But here's the big question, as I brought up the other night. Who is the Cohen that can legitimately exercise the ritual? You don't have one. You don't have one. You don't have anybody that can prove that lineage. You have a lot of people that claim they can. There's all kinds of stuff about going back and seeing the DNA and bones and stuff like that in those days. Hey, you got to be careful because the Herodians were Edomite Arabs. And a lot of Jews were Jews by nationality, not by genealogy. All that was lost in the Babylonian captivity. So, stop praising Israel. Start calling them out for their iniquities, where you're not doing your job, and God is just laughing at you. And Israel will continue to suffer these things, which are horrible. I'm not saying they weren't. I can't believe all those kids out there. What did they killed like almost 300 of those girls and boys out there? Teenagers, young 20, snuffed out their lives like that because they're freedom fighters, because the Hamas were freedom fighters. Freedom fighters don't kill innocent, unarmed people. That's murder. But you can't turn around Israel and say you can do the same thing and think that you're morally superior. You're not. Right there. Your own law, Torah law, not your stupid Israeli Knesset law. Okay, so in the title here we have a thing called, I said it, Nakba and Mosaddegh. I'm going to start with Nakba because that's kind of the chronology. Everybody wants to excuse what happened in the Palestine in 1947 and even a little prior to that. I don't know if you knew this, but Menachem Begin was the one who blew up the Hotel David and killed a bunch of people who weren't Arab, Palestinian, or anything else. They were European elites. And he blew up the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, or was it Tel Aviv? One of those. He was a terrorist, one of the first, and he was Jewish. I see all these people on X. You can't go back to that. Things are different now. It's a new world. You can't go back. Yes, you can. Because you have to understand why this situation has developed the way it has. The Nakba, which I don't know exactly. I don't believe that's a biblical word. I think that's modern Hebrew. My guess is that it basically means, if we break it down into Notaricon like we did this, it would basically mean something like taking over the house. Now, that would be kind of what it is. My spirit to take over the house would be kind of what it is. And that's exactly what the Jews did in Palestine in 1947 and 48. They call it the Nakba, and it's when the Jews came in there and evicted. They fought the Palestinians, killed a bunch of them. If they wouldn't leave their homes, they executed them. They took over their homes and they squatted in them until they could say that they were their own homes. They stole those people's homes and their land. all because God gave it to them 3,000 years ago. And then today, the UN and the Rothschilds, the Balfour Declaration in 1918, 17, whatever that was, declared that it would be their land. Is that your God, Israel? Well, God just used them, really. And so, like in Joshua's time, going in and slaughtering entire cities, you think you could do that to the Palestinians? What kind of trouble did that cause the Israelites over the years? Same thing you're experiencing now, because God didn't tell them to do that. So the Nakba you need to look up. You can Google it. It's if you want to spell it out when you Google it, so you can kind of learn a little bit about it. It's Nakba, Nakba, Nakba. That's the transliteration from the Hebrew, but that'll get you there. Okay, you put that into Google and you can read about the Nakba and about the eviction and the slaughter of the Palestinians by the Jews to take over their land and their homes and their possessions. Nobody wants to talk about that. How long is that going to affect somebody if you steal their home, kill their family, take their land, their means of living? Is that going to go away, 10 years, 20 years? Hell, the Jews still talk about the Holocaust. And that's been, 70 years ago, 75 years ago? Almost 80? And they're still complaining about the Holocaust. I'm not saying they shouldn't. But if they're doing that about the Holocaust, why can't the Palestinians say, hey, you did the same thing to us a lot more recently, and you continue to do it? But these Jewish supporters will get out there and say, Israel, we got to support Israel. They're the chosen people. They're not acting like it. I'm sorry. And I mentioned some names the other day I shouldn't have. But as much as I respect a lot of what those people say, and I'm not going to repeat it here, you're wrong. You're wrong to support a nation like this. And it's not, talk to the Torah Jews, you Jewish messianists and you Jewish people, okay? And then you'll understand where they are. Maybe if you want to talk to me, you can DM me on X. I don't have any real contact here, not really. But DM me on X and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this. Call me out. You can't excuse the evil that's coming out of that little nation out there. And they're reaping some of that reward right now. Again, I'm not taking the side of Hamas, okay? I'm not. Or Hezbollah, for that matter. Or any of those states that are coming after those people in Israel. You kill an unarmed man, woman, or child, and I'm against Hamas for what they did. But I'm also against Israel for what they are doing and about to do. Okay, so that's enough. Now let's talk about this whole thing with Iran. Most of you should know this history. I'm just going to give you a real brief rundown. The CIA, the election in Iran in 1949, 1950, somewhere in there, they elected a guy by the name of Mosaddegh. It was a good election, the people chose him, and it was very stable. But they were friends with Russia, because they have been for a long time. And of course, Israel never really, and Saudi Arabia never really liked because Saudi Arabia, they're basically Sunnis, right? All right, so they didn't really like Iranians for the reasons I've just explained, both of them. Israel was a little concerned, and Saudi Arabia was a little concerned because of that and because of the association with Russia at the time of the Soviet Union. So the CIA said, we got to do something about this. We need to get the oil there. We need to put somebody in who will let us rake the country like we do everywhere. So the CIA overthrew the democratically elected President Mosaddegh and installed the Shah. And you know what happened after that. If you don't, you need to read the history. So we wonder why Iran is upset at us today. the Muslims and the Jews and the Christians lived together really pretty well for a long 100 years, hundreds of years. Even with the crazy stuff that was in the Quran and crazy stuff that was in the Talmud, and even some of the crazy stuff the Christians did, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, with Hypatia killing her and skinning her with those shells to send her disgusting flesh because she's not a Christian. She's the flesh is disgusting. You know how I come about with people that talk about that, how disgusting it is for them to desecrate and denigrate what God has created them to be. You're to elevate this, not to denigrate it. But at any rate. So we've had problems with Iran ever since, all by planning it out that way. They wanted this. And then in 1979, some of the Ayatollahs there and the people got tired of what was going on, and they kidnapped all those Americans, and we had the big hostage situation. And then the day of the inauguration with President Reagan, Iran released them. Then there was some other stuff behind the scenes I won't get into right now. But the point is, this was a problem of our own making, and it was deliberate. Just like our making of ISIS was deliberate, and Al Qaeda. And over here, in the situation we have now, as I explained the other day, Hamas was a product of the Mossad. Wickedness, deceit, intrigue. Again, rabbis and you Jewish folks, stop praising Israel and start calling them out for their improprieties and their sins. So that's my presentation for the night. I'll take a few questions. All right. Let's see what you got. Yeah, I like that TFB about not fighting wars, not trying to blame God and ancient writings for your travesties today. It also says don't plunder somebody for your advancement, right? Well, they're doing it, claiming it's their land. Story of Lot and the angels. They were seeking refuge, no. That's different. Now, cities of refuge were specific places you would go if you had killed somebody, whether on purpose or accident. Okay, no. I don't mean just generally that you're seeking refuge. These were specific places. They're mentioned in the Old Testament. Specific cities of refuge that you could go where if you got in that city, they could not pursue you. Okay, no, Lot and the angels, that type of thing, that's a whole different deal. Okay, that's a whole different deal. It's not the same thing. Sodom seeing the soldier. I'm not sure I know what you're talking about. Yeah, they created Hamas. Let's see, it means premeditated, nothing to do with war. It means premeditated. You mean this? No, it doesn't make any exceptions. I'm sorry. Who are you here? Hold on a minute. I should have my other thing here. See, this is what people say. Oh, if it's in war, it's forgiven by God. You show me the scripture that says that. It's Andy C. It means premeditated, nothing to do with war. You're wrong. There's no exception here. Absolutely none. There is no exception. What you understand is propaganda that's been given by your nation states and your 501c3 churches so that they can make you fall in line with what the government wants you to do their bidding. No, Andy C., I'm sorry. There is no exception to this. Sorry. Yeah, we're not going to get into Eve and the twins and all that business. We're not going to get into that. Let's dance. I don't know where you want to dance. Okay, we're all over the map here. Looks like a lot of people aren't even on the subject matter. The USA is sending them money. I know. That's one of the things I talk about in the 1800s, the middle 1800s. There was a program put out about how they were going to destroy Christianity, Rabbinic Judaism, even Islam. They're going to set them all against each other. And more than that, they were going to break the United States by getting us involved in foreign wars, bleed us of money and blood. get us into a banking system that was controlled. We know about that. All that's happened. And so all of these wars, these aren't, it's empire building. These people have been seduced. I'm not going to name who they are. You should know who they are. But all these warmongers, they've been seduced into thinking that they can build the American empire, and that's okay. Victoria Nuland is an example, as is Anthony Blinken. Just to toss out two names here, right? Or General Michael Hayden. And I could literally scores of these people, maybe hundreds. But at any rate, so they want to build this empire, right? We're not a light to the world. We're the oppressor. I was going to say something else there, and I got off the track, but I think you get my drift, right? Good evening, everybody. House of Lost Tribe. Good afternoon. Good evening. Rolf Steiner, how you doing? How come you took Steiner's name for your avatar, or your call sign here? I mean, I can understand he's a brilliant guy. I have a few intersections with him, I guess I'd say it. Not many, but a few. Yeah, that's true. Throughout the Old Testament, God tells them, the Jews, Dr. Data here says it, said he was taking them out of their land and dispersing them. It happened from Israel being taken out by Assyria, as I've mentioned many times, right? And it happened to Judah too. Babylonian exile, 70 AD with the Roman destruction. Oh, but it's our land forever and ever and ever. You've missed the point, Jewish people. You totally missed the point. And I'm not talking like a Christian. Well, I might sound like I am, but I'm really not. You've gone beyond the mark. You've either missed the mark, fallen short of it, or you've gone beyond it. You're certainly not on it. I'm not going to argue about the rapture. That's not what we're here for tonight. I want to know if anybody has a question. 70 AD, the Romans via God took their land away. That's exactly right. You can say God did it. Well, what he did was he just withdrew his protections. Okay? And as I mentioned the other night, the messianists at the time, and I said it was the James group, which is true, some of those, but it was a little more extensive than that. But at any rate, they actually forced prophecy. They knew the timetable, and so when James was killed in about 63 AD, right in there, they knew they had 7 years to fulfill Daniel, and so they pushed it until the Romans actually invaded. So it was a forced prophecy. Same thing we see right now with this whole thing with Israel forcing this prophecy, as I said last night, getting them to be attacked. It's all the same method. All right. David Knight was great today. Karen Carpenter, good. I unfortunately I didn't listen to him. I had some personal business to take care of. Supernatural. I'm not going to go there. You know, people can believe. I'd rather they believe that there's something special than that they believe that they can do horrible things. All right. Out here in Utah, in the Intermountain West, with the Mormon history, there's some things that have happened where a lot of these doctrines that rose up in this place, you've got a lot of men in particular that think that there's something special, that they're either, you know, the one mighty and strong that God sends to set everything in order, or I've even had some of them say, you know, I'm the reincarnated Jesus Christ. I mean, you know, you run into that kind of stuff, and it's aggravating. But you know, frankly, I would rather they try to aspire to something good, even though they're being self-deceived, I think. But as long as they don't go too far off the track, and they're trying to aspire to something good, I kind of let it go. You know, I might grin a little bit, smile a little bit, but I'm not going to get into that. But as far as genealogies and stuff like that, and I could discuss that at length, but I think it best not to. Okay, at least not now. I've done it in the past to some extent. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Lori Tillman. Yeah, you've been here for a long time with me, and I appreciate it. Yeah, 132 AD was the Bar Kokhba rebellion. By the way, Rolf Steiner, do you know who Bar Kokhba was? Do you know what he claimed to be? Claimed to be the Messiah, right? Second, there were a bunch of messiahs back in those days, not just Jesus. People claiming to be that, and that's another thing I might mention real quick. A lot of these people say, "Ah, when you die, you're gonna meet God. You're gonna meet Jesus. Jesus is gonna be there." I don't want to disappoint anybody. I know that's a lovely thought, but I hate to tell you, there's many deceiving spirits when you get over there that will claim to be things that they're not, that you have here. I know you don't want to hear that. I talked some time ago about people saying, "Oh, heaven, there's eternal peace there. There's no strife. There's none of this. There's no that." Wasn't there a war in heaven? Didn't Revelation talk about a war in heaven? You can have a war in heaven. It's not what we think, and this really is a school to learn how to handle things when you get on the other side. And there are deceiving spirits over there as well who will claim to be Jesus Christ himself. And if you don't know how to test him, test these spirits that come to you and say that that's who they are, you can be fooled. Well, how do you know you're going to succeed, Roy? You ask. I don't know. I've experienced some very significant things, and when I have situations occur that I consider somewhat spiritual, I put those situations to the test to see if they meet certain criteria. I've rejected a lot of them because they didn't meet the criteria. It's not as easy as you think. What about the Native American Indians? I'm not sure what you mean, Ralph Steiner. Do you mean if God would take them into this? Yeah, I've said before, Jesus Christ is the personage isn't what's important. It's to have the law of God in your heart and your mind, that you love God and love your fellow man. That's the important thing. You don't have to be a baptized Christian to have that. And to be born again doesn't mean you go in the water and get baptized and then you come out and you have the Holy Spirit. That's not what it meant. But I'm not going to argue with the Christians tonight. BP Earthwatch and I have talked about that quite some time ago. It means that you were born from above, that you were actually unlike the fallen angels, children, the Nephilim, who were not born in heaven initially, begotten by God, but by these fallen angels. They don't have the same privileges as God's begotten sons and daughters who were born from above. It's all been twisted. It's all been twisted very bad. Okay. Oh yeah, Native Americans probably are Magnolia. I don't even get involved with that. That's fine. What about the Neanderthals? Well, that's archaeology and anthropology giving us again throwing stuff in there because they don't want us to be descended from royalty, from deity. Really, they don't want us to do that. It's very likely, however, that who they call the Neanderthals, in my understanding, may actually be our early patriarchs because they were very powerful men, very strong bones. They didn't waste away. They lived a long time, so that's probably who they were. And the depiction of the Neanderthals that they do today is probably not exactly right. I think they looked a lot more like us, but they were stout. They were big. They were tough. Isaac is a good example. Isaac was a badass. He didn't want to mess. Can you imagine? I mean, if the story's true, right? I'll give you the leeway one way or the other. Abraham, you know your dad's going to put you on an altar and stick a knife in your heart. I mean, to submit to that, what kind of a guy could do that? And it steeled him. It steeled him. His mom knew that something bad was happening, but then she heard that he survived and he was coming back. This is Sarah, and she was so overjoyed that her heart gave out and she died. So she never saw him again. Not in this life, anyway. Not as we see each other. But later on, Abraham, knew he had to find a wife for Isaac. He's getting up in the years there. He needed to take care of his son, so he sends his servant off to find a wife for Isaac, who this wife would be a member of their own extended family. In other words, a Shemite, right? Descended from Shem, not necessarily from anybody else. They had to marry within the Shemite line. And that's a fascinating story, too, when you really get into it. But at any rate, so the servant goes and finds Rebecca. You know the story, those of you who read the Bible. And so she agrees, okay, to come back and be Isaac's wife. So she comes back, and let's see, Christians, what kind of a marriage ceremony did we have? Did we have papers to sign? Did we have, some kind of vow going back and forth? That did happen, but you don't know what it was. Because the scripture says that when Isaac saw Rebekah, when the servant was bringing her back, he immediately fell in love with her. Isn't that something? Kind of like when Adam saw Eve, and took her into his mother's tent. She was dead at the time, but he would have had a surrogate mother at that, not a surrogate, a replacement mother, kind of like a stepmother at that point, who would have ensured, as I mentioned this years ago, that after they had their little session together, which is the actual marriage, then the mother would go in, the mother of the bridegroom would go in and check and make sure that there was blood on the bed, so they know the hymen's broken, that she had the tokens of her virginity intact. That's another story, though. I won't get into that much more tonight. Leah, who was Jacob's first wife, her weak eye in Hebrew cultural language really meant that she was not a virgin. That's all it meant. She didn't really have bad eyes. Bad eyes in the way that she made a bad choice early on, and that's why Laban wanted to marry her off. His oldest daughter, he wanted to marry her off, but she was damaged goods according to that time period. So Jacob got upset and said, "No, I got Rachel's the one I want," and that's why he got Rachel. Of course, he had to work another 7 years. That's another story. God is against. I'm not going to talk about rapture tonight. That's not. Why can't we stay on the subject matter? I mean, you guys might be talking about each other, but is it ever possible that our chat sessions can stay on the subject? I don't mean to call you out, but I don't know why we get. This is the. If I was in the university, which I've been, all right, or even at Sunday school, and we're talking about let's say in school we're talking about mitochondria. Okay, in a biology class. We're talking about mitochondria, all right? All right, so the whole subject matter is mitochondria, and I raise my hand and say, well, yeah, but what about the Niagara Falls? You see, why do you do that? This is the subject matter. Can you ask questions about that? I don't mean to come down on you, but golly, guys, I come on here so that we can discuss important issues, and you get off on these tangents. Why? All right, I guess I'm done. I give you a chance to try to understand, or at least look at how I understand things. I'm not saying you have to, but I got to tell you, this is important stuff, and it's why I call the rabbis out all the time, because they know this, and if they don't, then they're not who they think they are. Who said that? Spiral Bear, how are you? I got your DM the other day. Actually, it's been a few weeks back. Thanks for staying in touch. I appreciate that. But you're kind of. I'm not, of course, coming down on you here. You're forgiven. House is lost tribe. It's okay. It's easy to do that. I just I bring these things up for a reason, and I thought I kind of outlined how important it was that we talk about why Israel is not being righteous, even though they've had a horrible thing happen to them, and people that were just visiting the country there. That poor German girl that got killed and then paraded in the back of a pickup truck. She wasn't even Jewish. She wasn't even Israeli. Then we have Americans over there that are hostages. Where in the hell? I can't remember anywhere in the Quran where it says you can take hostages. I don't remember that. Certainly not in the Torah. Prisoners is one thing. Hostages that you then execute to get your way. That's forbidden. That's murder. plain and simple. They're not. They're not. They're not combatants. I'm sorry, they're not. Even though there are arguments about, oh, there's no innocence in a country that's democracy, and they all. No, you can't do that, Hamas. You can't do that. Okay. Anyway, it's good to see you, Spiral Bear. Bubba Joe, go to my religious series, in my Eisenman series, and I talk about what the word virgin is in Hebrew, Betula, and it has nothing to do with not having. Well, there are two different words. There's Alma that's used about the young woman in Isaiah, and they call her a virgin, and then there's Bethula, which really does mean she hasn't had sex. The Isaiah word is Alma. It's a young woman who has not yet given birth. Okay? Not yet given birth. It has no connotation that she has not had sex. So, yeah, a virgin is a woman who hasn't given birth yet. That's an Alma. Right. We are lost people. Keep talking. Wait a minute, Harold. Okay, I don't want to set myself up as an inerrant teacher. I'm just trying to show you things that people haven't talked to you about. That's really all I'm trying to do. Especially the last 2,000 years. You look at the Dead Sea Scrolls and how they looked at things in the first century. And then you look at what some of the agitators did. And when I say agitators, I mean people like Josephus, some of the early so-called church fathers. They had an agenda, and they got off the original teachings. They did, and Paul even did. Came up with all these other things, and then it all got corrupted. And I could give you a lot of detail that I've done it in my religion series, in the playlists. Pardon me, I ate some dinner tonight and some potatoes actually, and I'm burping a little bit. So that happened on the Christian side. Well, again, Rome had caused a problem with the early, what you would call Christians. They were really Messianic Jews. They call them Messianists. This is all in Dr. Eisenman's work. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, you get this too. The later ones that were written in the latter part of the first century BC and first and middle part of the first century AD. People dispute that, but the internal evidence shows that those particular ones were not written in the Maccabean period, which was like 150 to 75 BC. No, it doesn't match up. But anyway, that's because they're trying to protect the traditional viewpoint, these people that put all the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Maccabean period. So at any rate, we have these things to show us what the early Christians were really about. Paul was not a true Christian. He invented Christianity. The Christianity you know today was invented by Paul. It was not something that was condoned by James, by the Messianists. As a matter of fact, that's really why they tried to kill Paul. They figured he had blasphemed. So he was not innocent. He was not innocent. And he had killed people, and he admitted it, right? But I'm not going to get into all that. But you had that problem with the Christians in Rome. Put in people like Paul to take over the movement to basically pacify it and to make it so that it was, change the meaning of if somebody strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. That's not. It doesn't mean that you submit to torture. It doesn't mean that you let them beat you up. It had to do with the motion of the hand. Because if they hit you backhanded like this, then you turn the other cheek, they'd have to hit you with the other hand. What does that mean? It's a challenge. It means we're going to fight. It doesn't mean I just submit to you. It's all been changed. And then, so that happened with the Christians with the Roman help. And you had, following up through the centuries, towards the end of the second part of the third century, you had the Council of Nicaea and then the Council of Carthage and Council of Damascus, which where the Bible was put together, the New Testament, Council of Carthage and Council of Damascus, not the Council of Nicaea. That's not where that happened. That was to resolve some Marcionite problems. But anyway, that's another story. So you had Rome interfering with the development of what you know as Christianity, which was really the Messianic movement. Rome had to stomp that out because it was a problem for them. And the Jews were a problem for Rome as well, the regular Jews. And so they had the Council of Yavna in 90 AD about, and that's when Rabbinic Judaism was born. It changed, the Jews will deny this, but it changed the structure and even the belief system because the Jewish religion had to conform to what the Romans wanted. So you had the Council of Yavna, and then later the Talmudic Rabbinic Jews came about, and now we've got this thing where, I have these problems I've talked about today, right? So the original ideas, they didn't evolve into something better. They were corrupted. The water is usually the cleanest at the origin of a stream, right? That's usually where it's cleanest, where you have the fewest impurities. The further away you get, the more contaminants you get, and that's our situation today, which is why we need some help in getting back to the ancient understandings, which is where our core and our core, our beginning, and our destiny all meet. Understanding things like this. Now, I understand that the early people that got involved in the Torah and all that, we could say that Moses wrote it or that God did or whatever. I think I've already talked about they didn't even know about Deuteronomy until Josiah's time, which was way, way past Moses, way past David even. But you can put these things together like a puzzle, but it takes effort. I'll just leave it there. Well, I'm getting hot. I've been on here for an hour and 20 minutes. And when I get hot, I start getting, I kind of slow down. a little too warm. Don't worry about it, Ringa Hayes. Yes, that's all I'm saying is, and I know you guys talk amongst each other too, but I just hope, I often hope that, like I was hoping that somebody would say, well, what's Lamed Aleph? It means do not. Why does it mean do not? Well, I'll just tell you, this is the kind of question I was hoping might come up. These kinds of things, or maybe some further discussion about Nakba. What happened in 1947, 48. But lo, that's what this is. It means do not, or just simply no. Lamed is the flail. It's punishment. Aleph, of course, is the symbol for God. It's the symbol for the first father. It's the first letter of the alphabet. Okay, so basically it's God will punish you for murder. So don't do it. Okay, it's kind of a roundabout way to say do not. God will punish you. God will flail you. All right, like I said, we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. A virgin is a young maiden, yeah. Right, Lauren. It's in Hebrew, it's Alma. Alma is a young maiden. Not someone who hasn't had sex. That's a Batula. Batula is actually there's even more to it than that, and I could break it down for you. I did it in a lesson a long time ago, but I won't waste time on it tonight. Okay, let's see. Oh, I'm upset about that too, Paula Nitz, but we've seen that so much. Look, the sinking of the Maine to start the Spanish-American War. Pearl Harbor. The Gulf of Tonkin. The war against Iraq, Desert Storm, in 1990 and 91. I was at the Command and General Staff College, and what we knew, and we were getting, and at the time I can talk about it now because it became common knowledge through other means. But we got the briefings. What happened is that Saddam Hussein was complaining about the Kuwaitis drilling horizontally from Kuwait into the Iraqi oil fields. So the ambassador, I actually watched this happen. So the ambassador to Iraq, the American ambassador to Iraq, Gillespie was her name, went in. She represents the President of the United States. Went into Saddam Hussein, and I saw her tell him, if you invade Kuwait, we won't interfere. Set him up. So you have that situation. You have 9/11. And now, we could talk about we could even go into the treatments. We could even do all that. But now you have this thing in Israel, and they've done other false flags there too, or these not even necessarily false flags, but lies to start trouble, set things up so that certain events happen. Yeah, I'm upset about that too. It shows you that we are subject to these deceivers, these liars, these demons. And we have to pull out. That's why I'm telling the rabbis they've got to get busy and do their job and stop praising and glorifying that God's given them the chosen land back and start saying, hey, Israel, get your ass on the line and start doing what God wants you to do. Stop pretending like you're Torah observant when you're not. You're liars, deceivers, hypocrites. Of course, then they'll say, oh, you guys think you're Jesus Christ, calling us whited sepulchres. And I'm like, hey, the shoe fits, wear it. Get busy, guys. Okay. Yeah, meaning of yeah, that's right. That's really what turning the other cheek means. Somebody strikes you because it was a backhand. Strike you, turn to him the other. Also, he'll have to hit you this way, which that's not how they did. They'd have to use the other hand. So it became a challenge. That's exactly what it was. Yeah, the slap person must agree to the duel. That's good. Are the bad guys going to win? Well, for a while. Yeah, I'm sorry. You can't see. Okay, let me move aside here. Some of you might want to, and I'm sorry, I do that. You probably can't see all the writing there, the small writing. That's not really what's important. This here is, I would say, is what's important. Well, from down, all this from here up. So if you want to screenshot that, like I've done the others, you can screenshot this, and then you can look this stuff up on your own. Okay. Again, I got to caution you with the situation with Strong's and Gesenius or any Hebrew English lexicon or concordance. Almost all of those have been put together by people who are beholding to the Christian tradition, and they were subject to the whims of those Christian institutions in their translations. They couldn't go too far awry, okay, too far afield. So they don't talk about this stuff. Like if you go to Gesenius is this Hebrew lexicon right here. Okay, I've talked about it before. If you go to that, you look up the word resh or the letter resh, he'll tell you it means head. He'll tell you that. But he doesn't give you the other nuances of how it fits into what the word that when it's used to help construct a word, how is this applied to translate the word, to understand the deeper meaning of the word? Kill, or you will not stop a righteous man from gaining greater consciousness, which is what happens if you kill him. Okay, very important. So anyway, yeah, take a screenshot of that, and hopefully you can see it. Nakba is right over here, and you can look that up. Nakba is how it is in Google. It'll tell you all about Operation Northwoods, Rothsteiner. Yeah, and that's why I bring that up, because that's essentially what, in my estimation, of all that I can see on this thing that's happened over the last 5 days, it looks just like a version of Operation Northwoods, or as I said, a combination of 9/11 and the Las Vegas massacre, all covered up by the government, all done to accomplish some agenda, right? Whether to take your mind off of the problems that the leaders are having, or to start a world war, or maybe just to sacrifice people to their gods of Moloch and Baphomet. These people are evil, and they've got all kinds of reasons for doing things. Rothstein, Iraq wanted Kuwait back. I didn't get that. I was there at the CGSC. I was there at the Command General Staff College getting classified briefings, Rolf. Yeah, I'm aware of the situation with the British. I mean, the British and the Americans, they divided up the Middle East. I mean, it's just a mess because of what they did. But I never got any sense in my briefings that Saddam invaded Kuwait to take Kuwait back. He wanted to take. He came after him because of the oil that they were stealing from him. That was the whole issue. Oh, the Samson option? It's evil. I'm not sure they really have that capability. What he's talking about here is, what's his name? Christian Westcott? Oh, it's a girl. I'm sorry, Christian. Oh, no. Supernatural at Alabama. What Supernatural is talking about here is Samson, as you recall, in the book of Judges, he was captured by the Philistines, and then they put his eyes out, and then he asked God to help him take vengeance, and so the Philistines put him between two columns, and he was so strong, he got his strength back that he pushed these columns down, and the whole place fell, and he killed all of his enemies. That's the story. So the Samson option in Israel is they say they have a nuke. Well, they don't admit that they talk about the Samson option, but what it really means is that they have a sort of like what the Russians claim they have. It's kind of like a doomsday bomb that'll kill everything on the earth. I don't know that they really have that. It's a threat. I hope they don't, and if they do, I hope God punishes them for the threat. Yeah, I understand House's Lost Tribe. See, that's what they get you into, and that's what I was talking about earlier. That even if you do it for your government, they'll tell you that God forgives you for it because He understands. No. But it doesn't mean that you can't learn later and repent, because that is part of the process. You can do that, and that is paying for it. Okay, and I could give you some real concrete examples of that, but the best thing to do is just go to God and with your heart, and if you did something that you feel like you shouldn't have, tell Him, ask Him, what do you need to do? And it might be just as simple. I mean, a lot of people say, well, Jesus will forgive you for that. That's what He died for. Well, it's not that easy on murder. But I would just be humble and ask God to show you what you need to do to help make recompense for that. And it might not be an immediate answer, but something will come up. And it could be very simple. It could be that you save somebody's life. Let's say you're driving down the road and you see a car accident and you jump out to help and you save somebody's life. That might be all it takes. All right? So don't lament and worry. Just be aware that you're lied to constantly by these people, constantly by the leaders, constantly. Even the rabbis won't tell you this stuff. Again, I'm calling the rabbis to call out Israel and to call the whole country to repentance, especially the Knesset and the PM and Mossad and IDF and Shin Bet, which is Shabak, actually. It's an acronym for Shabak. But I won't get into that. What concordance should you get? Carrie Richardson, hi. Well, there are several out there. You can get Brown, Driver, and Driggs. Is that the right one? Yeah, I think that's right. Or you can get Strong's. Either one of these. Again, no matter which one you get, they're going to have these influences in the translations because of who funds them and what their expectations are in their own traditions. But it's a starting point. Then if you get a Gesenius, it'll help you break down, and they're better volumes than Gesenius to help you break down what the meaning of the letters are, what the meanings are. But this will get you started, and you can find these in any Christian bookstore. I'm pretty sure. Maybe even I don't think you'll find them in a Jewish bookstore. But anyway, and like I told you, Reish, you look up Reish in here, and you'll see it'll say head. So then you can kind of start putting together what these things mean. Okay, there are more meanings than what's are available in Gesenius, but it'll get you started. Okay, it'll get you started. Okay, we're coming up on an hour and a half, man. Yeah, targeted individuals is real, Luke. Absolutely. Absolutely 100%. I can attest to that firsthand. I could tell you some stories. I'll tell you one. Just one. I can't give you the whole scenario. But it involves not just surveillance and not just quiet weapons for silent weapons for quiet wars, that kind of thing. I'm talking between the lines here. I used to go to Starbucks to upload my videos back from like when I first came out with the Boston bombing series and expose. I knew I was going to raise some ires in the IC community, and I did. It was really serious. They started putting stuff up on the internet like Roy Potter was never in the army, he was never an officer. He denigrating my career when they finally couldn't deny it. And then of course they moved over into my personal lifestyle back in the 80s and 90s, which I've talked about. And by the way, well, let me finish this up. And so they set, and this still goes on today to some extent, not quite as much as it did back then, but every once in a while they'll check up on me. So I'm sitting in this Starbucks, and normally I'd go to a Starbucks and I'd rotate. I'd never go to the same one twice because I'd have my program, my video that I made, I'd go in, I'd upload it, make sure it was set, and I'd be out within, say half hour, an hour. And I'd never go to the same one twice in a row. Well, except a couple times I did. So I think it was the third time in a row I had been to this particular Starbucks. And I noticed that there was this lady sitting out just a little ways from me outside. I was inside, but she could see me from outside. I'm going to give you two stories here. And I can tell she's casing me over. She's checking me out. And it's not because she wants a date. All right? They know my type. Blonde, blue, nicely shaped. They know that. She fit the bill, but I could tell it was more than that. So, I'm kind of getting a little antsy, and I think she was trained well enough. A lot of times they just send greenies after me, but this one, I think she had a pretty good handle on that I had made her. So she got up and left. And I thought, okay, well, maybe not. Well, then this guy comes and sits down in the same chair. He's not as well trained. I can tell he's looking over at me. He's checking me out. He's pretending to be on his phone and taking pictures of me. So while he turned away, there was another door. I got up and got out. Well, he probably thought I just went to the bathroom or something. So he's still sitting there while I went around the building, came up behind him, and I'm standing behind him. He's facing that way, and I'm standing behind him, and he's maybe 30 feet from me, and I'm just standing there watching him. And he's on his phone, and he turns around and he looks at me. Well, the girl that had been there, the woman, then I spotted her. She had gone out, she had left, gone across the street, and was watching. She was the second person, and she was watching from across the street. And sure enough, when I came up behind him, she was on the phone with him, and she said, "Hell, he's behind you. Look behind you." And that's when he looked behind me. And then they both left. Another one was very similar to that. And there have been a lot of these. I'm just giving you a couple. There was this other one where I'm sitting there and I'm uploading. Same thing. It was the same place. And, I'm doing my thing in this typical, blonde, blue, nicely shaped, I like them tall and blonde. I'm not stuck on blondes. I like brunettes too. I love redheads too. But anyway, they try to fit in, so I'll be a little more readily acceptable, I guess. But anyway, she comes in a red dress, no less, and she sits down. Oh, who's going to sit down next to me? There are other chairs in there. She could have sat somewhere else. She was green. Sat down right next to me, opens her laptop, and almost immediately begins to talk to me. Dead giveaway. So, I'm trying to be nice, and then she starts, it was really small talk at first, and she says she's a real estate agent. Well, a lot of these um, secret agents pose in other businesses, and real estate is one because they can just get a license and hook up with a real estate company. They never even have to show up to work, but if you check on them, yeah, well, she works here, yeah, okay, right? But it's just a cover story. So she says she's real estate, and then I was pretty sure. But then she asked me some questions specifically about some people that had been at Bundy Ranch. Why are you jumping to Bundy Ranch? You don't even know who I am, or do you? So I said to her, I said, look, um, I know you're fed. you know, it's real obvious, but I like you. Would you like to go out to dinner? I think I've told this story before. She turned red, redder than that, as red as her dress, just flushed in the face, jumped up, put all of her stuff together, and was out the door. I think it took her maybe 20 seconds to gather her stuff up and leave. There have been even worse ones than that, but that just gives you some of the ideas. Okay, so yeah, there are targeted individuals, and of course there are things like um, microwave weapons. We saw that being used in Cuba. I think that was pretty well known back about 10 years ago when the U.S. government people were getting headaches and ringing in the ears and all that, and they figured it was microwave weapons that were being used on them. So yeah, they exist, and they use them on individual people too that they don't like. He scanned me. He scanned you, Roy. Whatever. I have Mars Gold. I don't care. Everybody knows who I am. I don't hide it. As a matter of fact, I got to tell you another story. Now, little wife. Let's see, my wife Brandon's still watching. I have to go through. Oh, okay. House of Lost Tribes. It's all right. I'll tell you one more story and then I'll go. Well, my wife died back in 2008, and I dated a little bit, and crazy, crazy things happened. Um, I don't think I've ever told you this, but 2 years after my wife died, I finally decided. I had some friends try to get me on internet dating, and that was a disaster. I won't tell you all that, but I had one of my wife's old bosses. I'll call him. Call me up and say, "Hey, I need some help at a show. Would you sell for me?" And I don't want to do that. I hadn't left the home in 2 years. I don't want to go anywhere. And he says, "No, Ray, I really need your help. Please, please." And okay. So I went and did this show, and I'm there, and I met this gorgeous lady. She was a combination of Barbara Eden from, I may have told you this before, Barbara Eden of I Dream of Jeannie and Marilyn Monroe. I mean, if you put those two together, you can imagine, somebody that looks like both of them put together. That's what this woman was like. I noticed her, but I didn't presume anything. A woman like that, she's got to be married, hooked up, whatever. Well, funny thing, we were there at the sign-in table together. Blonde, blue, nicely shaped, and close. She was within 5 years of my age, I think. I didn't know that at the time, but so I figured, oh, nice to meet you. Yeah, fine. Have a good show. Well, it turns out that we had booths right next to each other, so we visited the whole show. Well, pretty close to each other. Well, we got to know each other, and I started to date her. She lived in California. I actually went down there to meet her, and we went out to dinner and did some other things. Found out that she was a former girlfriend of Tom Selleck. She didn't stick around long. I won't give you a whole lot of details about that. He ended up marrying that lady from, he had other girlfriends too, but he ended up marrying that woman that he's married to now, who was British, as I recall. But, I forget why I started to talk about this. But I guess just, they know my type. So they try to send the women my way that I might have some willingness to open up and say things maybe I shouldn't. I guess that's the reason why I told that story. Peg Bundy? Peg Bundy? Is there somebody from the Bundy family? And I don't mean Ted Bundy, it's the Bundy Ranch people. There's somebody from the Bundy Ranch here? I don't see them. Okay. All right. We've been going for an hour and almost 41 minutes. Yeah, Magnum PI. He was Tom Selleck from Magnum PI. This lady, by the way, was actually an extra apparently on the show a couple times. It's just kind of interesting. So that's where we are, and I'm pretty picky as far as dating comes. I things have really changed in the last 20 years. You could go up to people and say, hi, what's your name? You seem to be a nice lady. Would you like to go out for, a breakfast sandwich? Something simple first, right? Man, you can't do that today. You'd go up to people today and they think you're weird. They think you're, an axe murderer. You just can't talk to people. I've even noticed, even 5 years ago, 6 years ago, before the COVID thing, I could still walk around and people would make eye contact with you, and you could say hi, and they'd say hi back, and that doesn't happen anymore. People are looking down, looking away. They're afraid to make any kind of a real social connection. These things right here, of course, have been a major cause of that. But it's not just that. It's the way the society has been divided against itself on purpose. Okay, so I'm sorry I started to answer some questions tonight, and then I'd get sidetracked. I do that sometimes. And because of the nature of this thing, I don't get pulled back into the original question and answer it very well. So I apologize for that. But I'll be back on, of course, if something significant happens. And as I've explained, I've kind of changed to more of this type of stuff here because all the things that are happening in the world, they draw us away from our core, who we really are, who we were, who we're going to be. And I think that it's necessary for us to have this other discussion that's away from these deceits and these immoral things that are happening in the world. Not that we can turn our back on them or ignore them. We need to be aware of them. But we need to spend some time building up our spiritual fortress. Okay? And that's why I don't talk so much about the political or military things anymore. This whole thing, and of course, Israel over this last weekend was so horrific. And then you get all these people, pro-Jews, that say, yeah, we can kill them all. All the people, all the Palestinians, all this, all that, and we're totally justified because they've done it to us. Then you got, the Hamas people saying, yeah, we can kill you because you've killed us, and none of them have the Spirit of God. Their hearts have turned cold. So I had to address that. Oh, Peg was, oh yeah, Al's wife, married with children. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, Peg was married with children, Al's wife. That's right. I remember that now. Ugh, showing my age again. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for coming. Hopefully this was of some enlightenment. You rabbis, if you've been watching this, do your duty. You got to call the government in Israel to repentance. You've got to call the people in repentance. Get away from that debauchery and that degeneracy that they're doing over there. Both the government and the people need to be called to repentance today. If you want that to be the promised land that God's going to bless, because as right now, he's sending Assyria against you in the form of Hamas and Hezbollah, etc. You better start calling those people to repentance. They're not the chosen people if they don't do the chosen thing. Y'all take care out here.